especially in pre-university education, like high school education. Education has barely changed. And so then there's a paradox, right? That if we hold education to be the most important systemic tool that we have to prepare young people for the world in which they are inheriting, well, how is that possible if education has remained virtually at a standstill for the last 50, 60 years, but yet the world around us is changing at the fastest rate it's ever changed before? And so that is a paradox that we have barely been able to even grapple with yet, because we haven't yet had to live the implications of the change in our world. We are terrible at understanding when the world has changed. It's only when the system constructed.
All right. Naheed, thank you so much for being here with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was telling you off camera, you're my first international guest. So truly appreciate it. And I'm really excited to jump into a conversation. I've heard a lot of great things about you, and I appreciate you giving us some space and some time.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And you also come highly recommended as well.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to jump right in. So you've got quite the story. We were doing our research. A lot of different countries were mentioned. An international story. We spent time in Canada. You're now in Wales, I believe. You were also in Kenya for a little bit. So you've been around the map, to say the least, with respect to education as well. For those who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, could you walk us through what your career journey has been like? How did you get into the world of education, and how has it led you to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most important decisions of my life was to go into education. And it really came about after I finished my undergraduate degree, which was in business, interestingly enough, where I was going to pursue a career in business. That was my plan. And after having a chance to travel a lot of the world for about a year with a really good friend of mine, I came to the realization that contributing to the world through business, may not be the best way to ensure that I could look back 25 years later from that decision point and feel like I had a positive impact on the world. I wasn't confident that I could do that if I'd gone down the business route. And I felt that education was going to be the best way that I could contribute to the world in some small way by helping young people to be able to make really good decisions for themselves and for their communities and for their countries, in whatever the interest that may be. And so that was a way through which I wanted to have an impact. And so ended up then re-educating myself as a teacher and that kind of thing. Went to Kenya, spent 10 years there, really grew as a person and as a professional. I really loved my time there. And then came back to Toronto, which is where I'm born and where I'm from, and had a chance to work at Upper Canada College there for 6 years before coming to Wales. So it's a brief tour of my journey.
When I resonate with that. So I did business. It took me a little bit longer than it took you to realize that my love lies somewhere else. When you had made that decision, was it difficult knowing that you might be, and I'm using air quotes, behind your friends who have graduated, who are starting to work, but now you're having to make this decision to slow down and relearn and go into a new industry that you know nothing about? Because I have felt like that early on in my career. I'm sure a lot of people do as they think about pivoting if they're moving from another career to another one. So how did you feel? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you want to do it really quickly. Like for at least myself, I'm always on the go kind of thing, and I like to move quickly. And so in that sense, I tried to do it as fast as I could, and I just sort of paused and felt like, I was potentially not thinking enough about the long term by trying to do it in the shortest way possible. And so I then just kind of slowed down and wanted to do it in the best way that I could, with kind of a 10-year or 15-year time horizon in mind, as opposed to a 2-year time horizon. And so once I was able to shift my mindset that way, then it became really easy to say, okay, look, I can do something else for 6 months while I wait for my B.Ed opportunity at UBC to open up, and those kinds of things. So I think just having a bit of patience and taking a slightly different trajectory of time, different time horizon, is what was helpful for me.
Do you do that often? Like in points in your career, would you like stop and be like, where am I headed? Like, am I moving in the right direction? Is that an exercise that you do often? I don't do that transparently, so I'm wondering if that's something I should start doing.
I do that once in a while, but I'll tell you where I do it more. I do it more with my interactions with other people, because what I always say to myself is that whether you believe in karma or whether you believe in like the world coming back to you in a different way or whatever it may be, I really believe that if you do good in the world, if you treat other people well, it'll come back to you at some point. And conversely, if you treat people poorly, if you don't give time when you should give time and those kinds of things, that'll also come back to you. And so in that way, I really try to take care of my relationships. I try to take care of the way in which people engage with me and the way I engage with them. It means a lot to me that people feel they may not be happy necessarily with every engagement they have with me, but they feel that I have treated them with dignity. And that's one of the ways that I try to live and do my work and live my life.
Yeah. I'm going to pivot into a whole different direction because it's a pure curiosity, Naheed. How were you like as a kid? Like, were you how would your teachers have described you?
Yeah, interesting. I was generally studious. I think I was generally social and outgoing and those kinds of things. I don't think I was remarkable in any sense or nothing like that. Definitely wasn't the kindest person. Definitely wasn't the most thoughtful. Definitely wasn't the and so. But I think my parents grounded me really well, and that really helped. I was elected as president of the student council in my high school, and that taught me a lot. So I learned a lot about like engaging with others and how to kind of get things done and how to work with multiple people with different priorities and competing interests, successfully and unsuccessfully at times. So yeah.
You feel like you were liked a lot? I mean, I feel like anyone who becomes a president at their school is usually the most liked person. At least that's how it was for me when I was growing up.
Yeah, generally, yeah. I guess. Yeah, I guess I would say I was liked. I think, but that grew over time. That wasn't. It's not like I arrived everywhere and and I was liked. Not necessarily, but I think as I got to spend time with people and deepen relationships, then definitely.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Do you have a mental model when it comes to building relationships? And I know you speak heavily about that and sort of being grateful for the people around you, but also making sure you're doing everything that you can and doing good in the world because you believe it'll come back to you. Is that just the simple action of whatever comes to heart? Is that your sixth sense, or is there a mental model that you can share with people that you think is helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes down to a fundamental belief that I am no more special than anybody else, and that in the big scheme of things, I mean nothing, right? In the big scheme of things, and neither do you, right?
Yeah.
None of us mean anything in the grand scheme of things, and so in that sense, that helps to keep me grounded, and to try to let go of the other things that may be built up in our heads or in my head about perceptions and about worth, depending on what country you come from, what accent you have, or what job you hold, or those kinds of things, which sometimes can carry weight in our societies. I try to put those to the side, generally speaking, as much as I can. Obviously, you can never entirely do it, but to the best that I can as I engage with people and the world more generally.
Yeah, I love that. That's really good. You spent a lot of time in Kenya, which you mentioned was special for you, and you loved your time there. I believe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where you became principal as well. When you were at Kenya as well, you're a teacher and a principal. Talk to us about that time. I grew up in Uganda, so I assume there's some similarities. And I went to Aga Khan in Kampala. So I'm just curious to hear what your journey was like in Kenya, because I know that's a very fond memory for you.
Yeah, I learned a lot more than I gave. I took a lot more than I gave. If that makes sense, it's where I think I really became more of a human. If that makes sense, a really relational place. Where the depth of relationship was so important, and so much opportunity and so much generosity of people to give of themselves in that kind of way, to avail themselves for relationships to be deepened. And that to me was probably the most significant thing that I took away, and very different to other places that I've lived in, right? Whether it be in Toronto or in Vancouver or in Sydney for a short time, or now in Wales even, right? People are less generous with themselves than I found, generally speaking, in Mombasa, at least where I was. And yeah, that was great. And as a young professional, working in a school that was relatively new, I was able to learn a lot and take on a lot. And as somebody who had a business background, I had a skill set that most educators don't have. And so I was able to access leadership quite young, because I had this sort of other skill set. And that really allowed me to grow in ways that I don't think I would have been able to if I was doing similar work in many other contexts.
When you got into education, did you always think that, okay, I'm just going to be a teacher for my life? Because I think that's why a lot of people first get into education is, yeah,
Mm.
I just want to teach. I want to be with the kids. I want to do this. I feel a great sense of fulfillment being in the classroom. Was that your intent, and or did you aspire to take on more leadership and oversee different aspects of a school? What was that like initially?
Mm. Yeah, so it was kind of the opposite for me. Like I went into teaching not because I wanted to be a teacher. Um, so for me, I had the view that I would have had if I went into the business world. I always thought to myself, how could I be a good CEO of a company if I don't understand what the grassroots of that company is, what the average employee does? How could I ever be a good CEO if I don't understand that? So I said to myself, if I'm going into education, I was going into education more because I was interested in things like policy or curriculum development on the education side. But I said to myself, how can I be a good policy writer or curriculum writer if I don't understand the baseline of education, which is teaching? So that's why I qualified to become a teacher, was so I could just understand that. And so, but then when I went into teaching, I fell in love with it. So I really came to love teaching, but the way in which I felt like I wanted to have impact was going to be at a more structural level. And so, did look for leadership opportunities as young as I could, as early as I could. And that's, I guess, how eventually it became to the stage I am kind of now. I was on a senior leadership team, I guess, from the age of 27, I want to say, is when I joined senior leadership. I'm 46 now, so, yeah, so it's been a bit of time in leadership capacity, but that's how it kind of came about in that sort of way.
You don't look a day over 30. But
Right.
I've met only one more person who started their leadership journey very early, and I find it very interesting. So I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things I'd love to learn from you. So you moved from Kenya, and then you came back to Toronto at UCC. When I speak to educators, one of the things that they talk about is a deep sense of attachment that they usually form with any school. You spend 5 years at a school, 6 years. It's like a family. You form a sense of deep connection and attachment, which is why so many people stay at the same school. But also sometimes there comes a time where you have to move on. I know a lot of educators struggle with that. Is thinking about, okay, do I stay here because I have this deep sense of attachment, or do I go and try something else? How do you think about the balance between the two and growing your own skills and your own journey? But also, how do you balance the two? How do you think about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the first way I think about it is that, education is one of the slowest moving industries in the world. And if one desires to have some sort of impact, some sort of residue that's left behind when you leave, right? If one in some way desires to have an impact on the institution which they are a part of, then that requires time and commitment. So for me, the first thing is that you need to give of yourself for, 4-5 years minimum at a place if you actually want to help make change there. So that is one sort of domain of time boundedness for me. But I also think that there's a point when, especially if you're in leadership, if you're in teaching, I think it's a little bit different. But from a leadership standpoint, I think there's a point in time when also a leader or myself can become too complacent in the role that you're in because you have built the very systems that then you are operating. And so there can become a sort of almost like a stagnant type of thing because naturally you will build to the point of, where you cease to be able to build more, perhaps. And then you may not let the school evolve in the next sort of level of evolution that it needs to take. And so sometimes knowing when to get out of the way is what's important. And so that's a factor that's on my mind. And of course, the other factor are like pull factors, right? There may be just other opportunities that are better aligned with your professional interests or abilities at a certain moment in time. And sometimes you get knocks at your door that you need to learn how to listen to and to learn how to be in tune with, to know which doors to open, because not every door you should pursue, right? And that becomes more of an intuition, I think, over time, meshed with a bit of wisdom and with some good people around you to help you to talk through it and what you're feeling, and that's for me, that's taken me in the right direction, in that way.
Yeah, no, I really like that. That's well said. And when you think about moving different countries in education, right? You move between countries. What are some of the challenges or the benefits that come with that? I mean, you're moving from a country where education might operate very differently, or is valued very differently, or is thought of very differently, to different cities and places where the perspectives are different. So is it more of a you go and you spend enough time to consume that information, or how do you sort of, for lack of a better word, adapt to the new worlds of education where you are moving?
Mm. Yeah, it can be challenging at times, right? Because education is so deeply contextual, right? So not even to the country will have a sort of a different feel and a different set of policies and regulations and all that kind of stuff. But then down to the school level, each school is so different because it is
Mm,
so contextual to the land that it is on and the people that are there and the history that it has. And so in that way, it's really about listening and understanding and learning, deeply and for a long time. It doesn't mean that you do nothing else. It doesn't mean that you
yeah,
just do that. It's not linear, right? You're doing lots of things at the same time, but it's a particular attention to honoring the past of an institution that you join, and learning about why things are the way they are, and then just fundamentally coming with an appreciative mindset that allows you to, while you may find things that need to be improved, always appreciate what's there and always recognize that you are standing on the shoulders of somebody else who put in tremendous work to get an institution to where it is.
mm,
And so that's how I've tried to approach the different places that I've gone to. And I'm always up for an adventure. I think I'm adventurous by spirit, and so really enjoy the idea of picking up and going somewhere new. And I'm lucky to have a family that's also very flexible and adaptable and willing to take on adventures with me. So it helps.
that helps as well. I mean, you need to have a family that also enjoys the adventure equally as much. Otherwise, you wouldn't be. Otherwise, it becomes very hard to do that. Absolutely. I'd love to shift gears and talk a little bit about UWC Atlantic. I mean, I've never visited. The pictures look stunning, and it looks like it's at least from what I've seen and heard, it's a very historic place with a lot of legacy behind it in terms of where it's located and all the work that's gone into there. Um, Talk to us a little bit about what that space means to you and the history behind UWC Atlantic, but also what has your experience been like so far? I mean, it must be, of course, you're exciting because you're maybe enjoying a new city, but also from an education perspective, how has that transition and that journey been for you thus far?
It's been overwhelming in the best possible of ways. Uh, it's really nice to be in a place where your professional values, your personal values, your belief system come as close to 100% into alignment.
Mm,
It's rare to have that in a place of work. I find, at least with my own friends and family and those kinds of things, it's rare to have that. And I feel very fortunate to have as close to 100% alignment here as I possibly can. And so in that way, it is overwhelming and very satisfying in all regards. This place has such an interesting sort of um, uh, has such an importance in the international school landscape.
mm,
The ability to shift the discourse or contribute to the discourse of international education from the seat that I sit in is unlike any other institution in the world, almost.
mm,
And that's because of its history of service and almost like creating the idea of service, right? And what that is, through sea rescue and building boats and helping to invent the International Baccalaureate and, all those kinds of things that are part of the history of this place. And for me, arriving here, to what is already a really great school, the question was really about how do we think about our next decade? And how do we help to ensure that, we should even exist for the next 10 years? Like, why? Right? And that became a really kind of important exercise for us here at the schools to be able to re-articulate what it means to be a school educating talented, eager young people from all around the world across 90 different countries and representing the entire sort of spectrum of socioeconomic strata in our world in one place. What does it mean to offer a world relevant, planetary relevant education to young people now? And you imagine our graduates who just, graduated this last May of 2025, they are going to be in their early 50s in 2060, right? So imagine the world in 2060. And the question I ask myself is, are we providing the best possible education to our young people today, not to prepare them for university, to prepare them for the world of 2060 and all the potential messiness and chaos of that world? And in that light, I think we are wholeheartedly across the globe failing our young people to equip them for the world, not only of today, but of 10, 20, 30 years from now. I see that as being our responsibility. And I'm fortunate to be at a school like this because it's the kind of place where we can actually ask that question and actually begin to answer it and actually do something about it, because it has sort of innovation and social responsibility in its DNA. And so that for me has been really the most enjoyable, important part of being at UWC Atlantic.
Yeah. Why are we failing our kids globally? I mean, I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So, if you look at almost any demographic curve in the world, right, that we can find, 2 dozen, 3 dozen of them, global population over time, urban and rural populations, the living planet index, CO2 emissions, global meat production, global plastic production, AI adoption, so on and so on, right? All those curves over time are exponential in their growth. So we understand that the rate of change in our world is something that we have never experienced before at this particular moment in time. But yet the rate of change in education is virtually standstill, right? It's a flat line, essentially. We tweak around the edges, a little bit of technology here, a little bit of other kind of things, learning pedagogy stuff we may do over there. But fundamentally, especially in pre-university education, like high school education, education has barely changed. And so then there's a paradox, right? That if we hold education to be the most important systemic tool that we have to prepare young people for the world in which they are inheriting, well, how is that possible if education has remained virtually at a standstill for the last 50, 60 years, but yet the world around us is changing at the fastest rate it's ever changed before? And so that is a paradox that we have barely been able to even grapple with yet, because we haven't yet had to live the implications of the change in our world. We are terrible at understanding when the world has changed. It's only when the systems and structures around us begin to collapse. And let's make no mistake, our world is in collapse in so many ways, right? Our environmental systems are in massive collapse. The systems that we have built in our world to keep us safe are in collapse. And so the questions we have to ask ourselves as educationalists is, well, what are we doing with the young people that we are working with to ensure that they are prepared to be able to inherit this world as adults, prepare to inherit this world, and be able to move us further in the direction that we need to, if we believe that things like peace and sustainability are important, right? I have to say that now because I'm concerned that in some parts of the world, that's maybe not as important as it used to be, or thought it was non-important, right? And so for me, in that sense, I think that we're failing our young people and preparing them for that. And people may say, oh, well, that's university's job and all those kinds of things. I disagree, because actually the most formative time in a young person's life are their teenage years. And that is the period to intervene. And we only know that less than half of our global population, much less than half our global population, access an education past high school. And so if we're not going to intervene in high school, then what are we going to intervene? Who are we intervening with? Those who are fortunate enough to access university, those who have the money, those who have the whatever, right? So anyways, that's my soapbox a bit about that. Yeah.
If I was starting as a principal tomorrow and I gave you a phone call, I said, Naheed, I'm bought into this. I want to prepare our kids for a future that they can they can be really proud of and prepares them for 2060. Um, but I have teachers that have been here for 15 years, 10 years, right? That are used to a certain way of doing things. And I also don't want to come in all guns blazing and sort of, say, we're going to shake this thing up, right? So part of it's cultural, part of it is even my nervousness to take that step. What are like maybe 2 or 3 things you'd suggest I do tactically, saying that, okay, if you want to move in a positive direction, if you want to actually change, if you want to, make your actually change things happening at your school for those kids, what would you suggest how do you suggest I approach this?
Yeah. It's a really hard question, right? And the first step is you have to sense your system, right? You have to understand the system that you are in, that is complex and intricate, and really understand it, because there are many points of leverage and many points of power that you'll have to navigate. And so for me, it was very much about understanding where my board was at, being able to work with them. Because if you don't have alignment with your board, for example, then it becomes very difficult to make ambitious change or to do things that potentially put the organization at risk, right?
Yeah.
It's fundamentally about risk, right? In many ways.
Yeah.
So understanding that. Then it's about understanding your team and the people that you have to work with, and understanding what their strengths are and what are their reservations. And they're probably there for really good reasons, the strengths or the reservations. What are the incentive structures that are in place? How do we align incentives in the right kind of way? And then how do we work with the people that we have the pleasure of working with to bring them on board and to take on their ideas and to involve them in the change? And I tried my best to do that, probably to varying degrees of success. And then you take a small chance. You try and build something. It doesn't have to be grand, but that is within the domains that you were able to play and work with. And as you build trust, and as you do that, and you show the successes of that, then you're able to do a bit more. So that's what I would advise and recommend. But it's definitely not easy.
Yeah. If I was to give you a magic pencil, Naheed, and I said, here's a paper, and whatever you design will come true tomorrow, how do you design our education system?
Boy, it becomes a planetary-centered education. It moves away from being the sort of student-centered to a fault, I would say, because at the end of the day, young people, old people, we work in deep 100% interdependence with not only the people around us, but the natural systems that are around us. And so we are not separate from nature. We are not some superior human species. I'm not a superior human being.
Right.
We are absolutely in partnership and in deep interconnectedness with everything around us. And so I would build an education from that as its sort of grassroots understanding, its mental model, if you will. And I would then from there think about what's the kind of curriculum, what are the kinds of pedagogies that need to emerge from there. We know that the challenges in our world, for example, that we face are not going to be solved through competition, or at least competition alone, right? We're not going to compete our way out of global pandemics. We're not going to compete our way out of the ecological crisis. We're not going to compete our way to global peace in our world. All those things require deep solidarity, cooperation, collaboration to be able to make those things happen. And so if that's the kind of world that we aspire for, again, presuming that we care about those things and those things are important, then education has to build in that future, right? Build for that future. And right now, it's no surprise that our education systems are deeply built on the spirit of competition, right? And that's because our society is built on competition. We believe that competition is the best way to incentivize human beings to produce or to be their best through competition. And I don't think that's necessarily true.
And that's when you say competition, is that like grades and like competing with your friends, or is that okay?
Yeah, both. I mean, so we have it in all elements of structure, right? Whether it be around who gets awards in schools, to being on the best sports team, to competing against other schools, to competing for a university place, right? It's competition is built very much into the DNA, into the fabric of our education systems. And it's reinforced, right? We have league tables. So we have governments that want to rank you, then you have people who want to sell you houses in areas where the school ranking is better. It's you're perverse, right? It's all over the place. and so I would start from a basis of cooperation, collaboration as being the building block of education, not competition as being the building block of education, in line with the sort of planetary frame of reference. So those, in simple form, that would be my magic wand.
No, I like that. I've never heard that before. That is really, really nice. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Speaking of change and innovation, I mean, one of the big changes that are happening in IB, which you mentioned has a place that has so much historical significance at UWC Atlantic, is a system transformations pathway. I was speaking to Julia as well from UCC, and they were sharing a little bit about it. But I'd love to hear it from your voice, and for the folks that haven't heard about it, what is that all about, and why is it such an important transformation in the IB program?
Yeah, well, for us, it marked the most significant way that we could help to contribute towards the resolving the challenges in education that I've just spoken about. And so, in 2021 is when the work on what is now the systems transformation pathway began here at Atlantic College. And we began this sort of conceptual understanding of what it was going to be, and is very much about the intersection point of human and natural systems, understanding that we are in deep connection with each other, and that we don't educate young people about systems, and particularly about human and natural systems and their inextricable link and overlap. And so we then began that journey of creating a prototype for it. And very quickly we began to fall into partnership with the IB around it. And then we co-created the systems transformation pathway with the IB in 2022, leading into 2023. And at the very beginning, I kind of laid the parameters for what we wanted to do for this innovation. I said we wanted to take, 2 courses off from the IB diploma, and fill the space with whatever this new program was going to be. Now the systems transformation pathway. I was adamant that there be no exams, no essays, because we already do that in abundance. We need other more radical forms of assessment for young people. Exams are terrible forms of assessment, generally speaking. I'm not saying they should do no exams, but if that's all that they do, then that's a problem, right? There needs to be balance. There needs to be diversity in the way in which we assess young people. And so those were sort of the parameters. And I said I really wanted to launch this in September of 2023. And so we're trying to build to that timeline, and the IB were a tremendous partner with us in that. And we launched in 2023 on time, and with 24 students at our school who started as the first cohort of this program. We just graduated the first cohort in May of 2025, which was tremendous. And so the course is really about built on a different kind of operating system, the kind that I've just actually spoken about, right? Something built on collaboration, built on a world-centered, a planetary-centered kind of framework, built on the idea of learning being transdisciplinary, being deeply interconnected across, the disciplines are great, but if that's the only mental map we have of the world, it's a pretty shallow and flawed map. A systems map is not perfect, but it's better if we understand the world through systems. So fundamentally, it's trying to give young people a systems understanding of the world and giving them the skills of what may be sort of systems design, systems thinking to understand the world. And then helps them to engage in some really deep and important systems in our world: food systems, energy systems, biodiversity, and then mass human migration, and now water systems. So students become experts in one of those systems for 15 months of their 2 years of the diploma. And they really go deep into understanding that system. And then they try to make a very small systems level intervention and move the food system forward, move the energy system forward in a local context. So they actually practice doing that as part of their learning, as part of their coursework. It's not just theoretical. It's not just project work that is sort of fictitious. They actually go into a community and try to help them implement solar panel energy, or lobby a local government to build more charging points for electric vehicles. So actually real, experiences to see what it's like to actually move a system forward. And then we ended the year with a bit of a celebration. It was a conference on just futures and understanding what a just future could look like through a systems lens. So that's what the program is about, and a really successful first cohort, and now we're into cohort number 3. We just entered into their first year. Yeah.
I love that. And those categories that you're describing, water, energy, are those predefined, or are those defined by the school implementing the program?
Yeah, so we define them here at the school. And then as the IB has now wanted to have a few more schools take on this program, so our sister school, UWC Southeast Asia in Singapore, they launched it in 2024. So they're into now
Oh
year
wow.
two. And then Upper Canada College and Mulgrave in Canada now are launching it now in 2025. So now, as those schools have begun to adopt it, they've taken a bit of the blueprint that we created, and then they're adapting it. So in some cases, they're taking a lot of what we've done and implementing it slightly differently in their own contexts, or they're taking parts of it and then bringing some of their own ideas and frameworks and value systems into it as well. So what the consistency though is that it's all about systems. That's the
Yeah.
consistency, and that they all have a sort of a peace and sustainability flavor to them, perhaps in different ratios, but are all part of the program.
Yeah, I would have loved that when I did IB because I was struggling with my IAs and EEs. But um, in any case, how do you then grade students? I mean, like let's say I go to a community and everyone's doing the work. Does everyone get a 7, or how does it work? You know?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we wrestle with some of those things because the purest side of us here at the school, and I should say that this work really is because of, a really special educator, Maria, who is our vice principal of learning innovation. I need to give credit where credit is due. She's the chief architect and artist and engineer behind this program. We had a lot of back and forth, between us with the IB in a really collaborative kind of way, thinking about this kind of thing. And we said, we really want to assess the thing itself, not artifacts of the thing, so we don't want to assess an essay that you wrote about the action that you took. We actually
Right.
want to action, right? And then
Yeah.
very wisely, our good friends at the IB said, yeah, well, look, that's really great in an ideal world, but what happens if there's a natural disaster in the country where they're supposed to do that? Or what happens if there's a strike and they can't go and do the thing that they were going to do? Now what happens? They get a 0 because the action
Yeah.
couldn't be done, right? So for very practical and wise reasons, we reverted back as much as possible to a sort of a summary, a reflection, a planning of the action as being the assessment that really evidences their understanding of systems and systems understanding and systems tools and those kinds of things. So those are 2 of the 4 assessment points are based on that. They then do a case study that they do collaboratively and individually as well, both. It's a whole kind of day that we do around this particular case study, which is actually really interesting. The students really enjoy that. That's a 3rd assessment point. And the 4th is a portfolio where they take artifacts of the work that they've done and then sort of reflect on that and then share that with the IB for assessment. So those are right now the assessment tools. I've no doubt it'll change over time as we are still in a pilot kind of phase, and
Yeah.
we'll learn from it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Nate, I could probably this podcast would last 3 hours, but I want to hold my horses there, out of respect as well, and sort of shift gears and move on into a rapid fire round. And so I'll throw you a question, Naheed, and if you could share a response in under a minute, that would be lovely.
Okay. Great.
So my first question to you: what is one belief about educational leadership that you've changed your mind on recently?
At times, I've believed that the leader is the most important person, and I don't believe that to be the case. I believe that we are deeply interconnected in this sort of system, and it's really important to listen to all nodes in that system. And I think teachers play such an incredibly important role in any kind of direction that an institution takes.
Hmm, I like that. Really good. Um, what is one thing that you would be most proud to be remembered for?
Most proud for helping to change the face of education through the kind of curriculum work that we're doing in partnership with lots of other really important people. That'd be one. The second is to help to change the face and style of what it means to be a head of school at an international school. Diversity is not the first word that would come to my mind when I think of heads of school in the international landscape. And we would love to see people from the global majority represented more readily in heads of school positions around the world.
I agree. I agree very much. What's something most people don't know about you?
That I'm a huge hip hop and
Uh,
Afrobeats fan,
Who's
like
your
big time.
favorite artist?
Oh gosh, Bien, I love like my Kenyan, my Kenyan artists. I have to enjoy. I'm not gonna lie. I love a little bit of Kendrick Lamar and a little bit of Drake too. I can hold them both. I can resolve the paradox and hold them both. Um, I like some old stuff. I love my Tribe Called Quest and and Most Def and yeah. So a range.
I love that. I used to listen to a lot, even when I was growing up in Uganda. A lot of Nigerian actually, like Davido, Wizkid, like a lot of Nigerian artists as well.
Yeah,
But yeah, once it gets to you, it gets to you, you know.
absolutely.
um, oh, I love that. Uh, what would the Naheed just graduating from business school think about the person you've become today?
Huh. Naheed from business school, I think, would be would be thrilled with the path that has been taken. I don't think I would have ended up in so many parts of the world and met so many incredible people. Wouldn't have met my partner because she's from Kenya and I met her in Kenya if it wasn't for that decision. And so I hope 21-year-old Naheed would be proud of 46-year-old Naheed.
I'm sure you would. You once said that you get energy from students and you know that you're in the right place when you get the energy from students. Can you share a recent student interaction that gave you that feeling or that made you smile?
As early as being at the gym this morning on campus and the gym was packed with with some students and teachers, and one student just walks up to me and gives me a fist bump and big smile, and he's like, "So, what'd you do yesterday?" I said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I was with my family and hung out a little bit. And what about you?" And he's like, "Yeah, had a great time, and we just chatted and laughed for like 3 minutes, and then went back to the workout." And that's a very casual interaction, but from that all the way to having a student reach out to me 2 days ago who graduated 4 years ago from the school, just to give an update on how they're doing and saying hello and just wanting to share the great things that they got going on in their life and saying a small thank you for the small part that we played here as a school in their current success. So yeah.
It shows a relationship that you have with the students as well. I mean, if you're in the same gym and maybe they're spotting you while you're benching, you've got a much more meaningful relationship. But no, I love that. That's a fun story. Um, as a leader, and I'm just throwing more at you now, Naheed, at this point, just out of transparency. As a leader, what is a skill that you haven't built yet, but you really want to build?
My go-to frame of reference typically is to be very reasoned, like very, reason focused and very evidence kind of focused. And I want to continue to develop my ability to be empathetic and to be compassionate and to be more aware of how other people are experiencing or feeling a certain moment or a certain place at a particularly given moment in time. Sometimes I can be caught up in my own head and I can lose sight of how others may be experiencing something that will be different from the way I'm experiencing it. I think that's so important in education, especially. Otherwise, you can end up in your own head too much. You can end up in too much of a funnel,
Yeah.
on your own sometimes.
I get it. No, that's really good. Okay, last one on the rapid fire, I promise. One piece of advice for a teacher starting out, and the same one piece of advice for a head of school starting out.
For teachers starting off, I would say, don't be afraid. You're going to make mistakes, and I know it's a delicate time to become a teacher, but don't be scared. We need courageous teachers, and don't be afraid of hard work. Hard work is key. A lot of good things require hard work, and so I would emphasize that with the courage. For a head of school, I would say similarly, it is a sensitive and a difficult time to become a head of school, but is one of the most rewarding things that you can do because you have the opportunity to help to shape a system, right, in a real way. And a head of school, I think one of the most important things that we do is we are moral guides for a community. And that is probably the most important thing that heads of school do.
Okay. I love that. Okay, I could keep going, but I'm going to stop now. This is really fun. Okay, we're going to move on to our final question. So we have a bit of a tradition here. We have previous guests leave questions for our next guests. So I'll pop out a question from one of our previous guests. Maybe I'll do two. And then I'll give you the opportunity to share a question for one of our future guests as well. So I could tell you who they are as well before. So why don't we start with this? Why don't we start, because we had Julia on very recently. So I'm going to start with Julia's question. She's from UCC, for those that don't know. And her question is, what does intergenerational learning, her handwriting needs improvement. What does intergenerational learning mean to you, and why and how should it be part of our students' education?
Very good. Very good. So thank you, Julia, for that question. I know Julia very, very well. So for me, it means two things. One, it means learning with people of multiple generations who happen to be here at this moment in time. And so from a student standpoint, that means, peers, it means teachers, it means younger people, and it means generations older than us, where we come to understand the collective wisdom that we're able to have when we genuinely embrace the incredible energy and vibrancy of younger generations that older generations may also have too, but particularly younger generations, with the lived experiences and wisdom and energy of older generations. That's one thing for me. Second is helping young people to develop a different sense of time, to think of time in a different kind of way. One of my teachers here at the school said it really nicely, that he thought of a 200-year timeline. And the way that he defined that, his name's Aditya, the way that he defined that is that, the youngest person that he'll have contact with when he gets older, maybe when he's 80, will be a young person. Yeah. And now when he was young will be, older as well. And when he's 80, and so I'm explaining it poorly, but you get what I mean, that the span of influence that he has a chance to be able to have, or touch points, will be 200 years in span, the youngest and oldest person at different points in time. Similarly, for me, it's about having young people understand that we have a collective responsibility in the decisions we make today for generations unyet born. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of responsibility we have to take care of when we make meaningful decisions for the now, in the now. So that's what it means for me.
I love that. That's such a nice answer, Naheed. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask you one last one from Tanay. And his question is, what is a question you wished I had asked?
That you had asked?
Yeah, I think that's what it means. What is a question I did not ask in this podcast, but you wish I had asked?
I wish you had asked, what brings you joy?
What brings you joy?
The everyday interactions, the ups and downs, being able to step back from that and understand and look at the arc over time. Spending time with my family. Those things bring me joy.
Yeah. Do you have kids too, or?
I do. I got two kids.
They're UWC Atlantic, or they're older, younger?
They're young. They're almost 7 and 9 years old right now, so they're a few years away.
Okay, nice. Very good. That's special. Yeah. Naheed, I'm going to give you an opportunity to leave a question for one of our future guests. So whenever you're ready, feel free to just share it out loud, and I'll capture it on my side here.
How do we more intentionally build harmonious communities that are increasingly more diverse?
Okay. Good luck to the next person to answer that. No, it's an important question. Thank you for sharing that. Naheed, I could really talk to you all day, but I do have to say thank you so much for spending some time with us. This has been a really, really incredible episode for me. Truly, I got to learn a lot from you. I love that you've got a very ambitious vision towards education. And I think it's really refreshing, and I respect it a lot because I know it's not easy to continue to have ambition in a world that moves slowly. And so for me to meet someone like that and spend almost an hour with is incredible. So thank you. Thank you for hopefully inspiring many people that listen, inspiring a thought, inspiring a moment, inspiring something in people, and for giving us a space to spend time with you.
Thank you. It's very, very kind of you. And, this is not stuff that we can do on our own. So we need people like you as well, right? Obviously, who can help to give us energy and who help to share views and share perspectives, and appreciate the role that you play as well in helping to ensure that our tomorrow is better than today, right?
Thank you. I very much appreciate that.